Welcome, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Ritu Bhandari, and I will be moderating this session on innovation and adaptation, coastal solutions to climate change. I'm joined by a great panel today. Let me just introduce them quickly. We have Ruth Konya, who's Mangoro Market Merry Program Manager, Melanesia Program from the Nature Conservancy. Welcome, Ruth. We have Patrick Huang, who's the Senior Expert Consultant for Ocean and Plastic at WWF China. Welcome. And we have Anup Matthews, who's the Business Head at Godrej Construction and Head Greener India Council from Godrej. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'll jump right into it. Climate change is having a devastating effect on Asia-Pacific's coastal ecosystems as well as on the global ocean. Coastal ecosystems from mangroves to coral reefs strengthen our resilience to climate change impacts, providing us with natural defenses to better withstand extreme weather events and improving our capacity to safeguard critical infrastructure and communities. In this session today, we'll discuss this very important topic and hear from our guests some very interesting case studies about the role of these coastal solutions in addressing the impacts of climate change, the importance of involving women and local communities for the success of these solutions, and how different stakeholders like all of you can design and scale these solutions effectively. Patrick, if I can start with you first,
Sure.
how can coastal solutions help in preserving climate change, and what role do oceans play in climate change adaptation and mitigation? If you could give us a quick overview.
Sure. So actually, when we talk about we utilizing the ocean as a climate adaptation, actually it may be not the best description because the ocean is actually doing all this naturally. Ocean has a lot of function that you mentioned on providing livelihood and different resources that we need, and also all sorts of like cultural heritage advantages. But actually, the ocean is also helping us absorb the carbon dioxide naturally since the Earth has emerged alive. Like for example, in the past 200 years, actually the ocean has already absorb 1/3 of the carbon dioxide that we produced, and also the excessive heat from the human activities. 90% of that heat is absorbed by the ocean. So actually, ocean is serving this function, but it's just that our activities, like for example, coastal constructions or the different harmful fishery activities, etc. All these kind of ocean economic activities, they are harming the ocean's health to serve these functions. And also because we mentioned that the ocean is absorbing the CO2 and also the heat. So actually, it has accumulated a lot of those heat and also carbon dioxide causing ocean acidification and also causing the climate change. So we have to tackle all these root causes of these, and also restore the original function of the ocean to alleviate climate change. Like for example, how we can restore the coastal ecosystems, like what you mentioned, the mangrove forest, the seagrass beds, etc., so that they can help store the carbon into the ocean ecosystems, and also how we can transform the ocean economic sectors, like for example, how we transform the fishery sectors to more sustainable without harming the ocean, how we can reduce the ocean reclamation activities so that the ocean can serve these functions naturally. And so actually, it is very important to join the ocean and climate agendas. Like for example, in this month, at the UNFCCC COP27, actually there has been a lot of discussions, and there are a lot of like good progress on this. For the first time in the outcome implementation plan, it includes ocean as some of the key actions, such as encouraging the governments to have regular dialogues on this, and also include ocean actions in the national climate goals and action plans. So these are encouraging news, and then we need further collaboration in the world, and the BEF is also very active in engaging in this. For example, we are engaged in the Global Mangrove Alliance and some other international initiatives that we look into how finance is helping the conservation and restoration of these important ocean ecosystems. And we are developing tools and also approaches to facilitate this kind of work. And then, yeah, we hope that we can talk more about this later.
Thank you, Patrick. You talked about action there, and I want to come back to that and how businesses and policymakers can really convert that into action. I want to come back to that. But moving on to you, Anu, for the business perspective, really, how can businesses approach this topic and leverage sustainable solutions like we're talking about coastal solutions right now to make them really an integral part of their businesses?
Yeah. So thanks, Ritu, for having me. I think businesses and enterprises have a very important role to play. They have the task cut out for them, so to speak. We at Godrej have environment stewardship very much a part of our philosophy. It's a value for us, and also community, giving back to the community is something which we think through every time we choose which products to manufacture and sell. And all of us, I think, as stakeholders, have a role to play in making sure that we conserve our environment and the biodiversity. But with Godrej, we started this way back in the late 1940s. So about more than 7 decades, we've now been conserving mangroves. We have about 1,800 acres of mangroves which we conserve, which is almost 2/3 of our property. So a commitment to ensure that we continue to conserve the mangroves is something which, as an organization, we want to demonstrate that commitment all through. So while we do industrial activity and various other real estate development, we do maintain the balance in ensuring that that part of the mangroves is not encroached upon. We secure those boundaries. We ensure that because real estate prices in Mumbai is very high, the tendency to encroach into private or public mangrove forests for firewood and then subsequently converting into real estate is very high. So conserving those, and then we also increase our awareness with schools and colleges. We work with research students in the universities to convey and improve their awareness about the ecosystem that exists in these mangroves.
Thank you, Anup, and we will definitely come back and talk more about the role of younger generation. Ruth, coming to you now, you are on ground preserving some of these mangroves, and we've heard from the other panelists about the important role they play in addressing climate change. Can you talk to us about Mangoro Market Merry program that you're working on, and the role of women and integrating gender in addressing effects of climate change? Why is that important?
Thank you for having me. Firstly, I'd like to thank The Economist, and especially Mary Kay for sponsoring this session. So I work in a community. We're working with a group of women. So why is it important to integrate gender into climate change? I think the answer is very simple. Climate actions must be gender sensitive, because men and women, they feel the effects of climate change differently. And so the aim of our program is to empower women through mangrove conservation so that they have a voice and be able to make decisions on issues that are affecting them. So we felt that it was important to engage the women, hence we came up with this program not so long ago, about 5 years ago. So what we do with the women is actually engaging them around 5 main components. So the first one is on gender inclusion. So when we talk about women, we also include the youth, because we believe that the youths are the future of the nation in anything that we do. So in doing so, we empower the women around having their voices being heard, having them empowered so that they're able to be part of the decision-making that is taking place in the community. So we cannot do this alone. Being a conservation organization, we work with K International to bring that human dimension into the conservation perspective. So that's our first goal. So the second one we work is sustainable livelihoods. So with that program, we basically try to link up whatever we can get from the mangrove, from the marine ecosystem, from the sea, from the ocean, and link it up to the market where the women can benefit directly. For example, with their crabs they're selling, they can sell it at a premium price because the mangroves are pristine and they come from environment that is sustainable. So the other program that we engaging with women is around biodiversity. So that's where we try to ground the learning. Not everyone knows about the importance of mangroves and why it is important to preserve mangroves and the marine ecosystem as a whole. So our challenge is to work with communities to raise as much awareness as possible around the importance of the mangrove and the marine ecosystem as a whole. So the other program that we work with our women is on climate adaptation and mitigation. With that program, we are preparing our communities for the blue carbon. So we cannot deny the fact that there are already carbon brokers in the country trying to enter into our communities and buy carbon from our communities. So illiteracy is a big problem in our communities because of not a lot of people get the education that we want. So with our girls and our women, most of the women hardly get the basic from elementary to grade 8, you know. So one of the tasks that we have is to educate our women and our mothers, give them prior informed consent so that they're aware of their rights, they're also aware of what they're entering into. So when it does come along, when blue carbon does come along, our communities, especially our women, are better placed to actually get as much benefit as possible. And of course, the last that we work with our communities is actually building their capacity in all those. So capacity building is more like cross-cutting that runs across all the programs that we do.
Thank you, Ruth. If I can just ask you to also talk about where you're running this program, because I think we didn't mention that. You're running this in Papua New Guinea, right? If you could talk a little bit about that as well, that'll be very useful for the audience.
Right, exactly. Okay, so I come from Papua New Guinea. So our aim of the program is to work with all the provinces that connect with all the maritime provinces. So we have about 22 provinces, and 14 out of the 22 provinces are actually maritime provinces. So we currently work in 4 provinces at the moment with groups of women that we are empowering right at the community level.
Thank you so much. Patrick, I want to come to you. You talked about importance of coastal solutions and oceans, right? And you mentioned the word action. I want to dig deeper, a little bit deeper on that. How can businesses and policymakers more effectively incorporate the role of ocean in solutions for climate change? Like, what are some of the concrete steps that you'd like to share?
Yeah, actually is a very wide topic. We can talk for days because there are actually a lot of different industry sectors which have different problems. But I would like to draw attention to a overarching view of this. So, for example, what are actually the values of the oceans which is worth our conservation work or restoration work? Because to businesses, the key language that they talk about is the benefits. So if we do not know the true value or the benefits that the ocean can bring to us, so how can we talk about conservation of the oceans? So it is also very important to really recognize the value of the ocean and how it can bring and what benefits they are bringing to the different industries. So WWF and BCG, back in 2015, we have developed a methodology to evaluate the ocean access value and created a concept of a shared wealth fund, which is actually describing the value of the ocean, all the ocean assets, for example, including the ecosystem functions, the resources that the ocean can generate for us, etc., and also how the different sustainable ocean industries depend on it. And last week, actually on Friday, WWF China also used this kind of methodology to calculate the share wealth fund of China's oceans. And it's actually the ocean's excess value is actually 54 trillion RMB. And also annually, the sustainable output of the ocean is 2.1 trillion RMB. So these are very huge value, and these are why we have to conserve the ocean. And then but of course, like this kind of methodologies to evaluate the ocean's value is still developing, and we still need a lot of improvements and also a lot of data collection all over the world in order to make more accurate estimation of the ocean's values and also the values that we draw from it. So this is the first thing. We have to really recognize the ocean's value, and we need the government to put a lot of efforts to drive this and also make use of this as a guidance to the developments or strategic plannings. And the other one is about how we can drive the finance sector to support ocean economy transformation to sustainability. So WWF also work together with different partners to develop the sustainable blue finance principles, and it is also recognized by different finance institutions already. And we also develop different guidelines and also tools to recognize the risks associated with ocean economic activities and how the finance sectors, they can address it and avoid the harmful activities to be supported by their businesses. So WWF China is also developing a blue taxonomy based on those principles and guidelines that the key think tanks and organizations have been developing. And for example, WWF EU, they also engage in the EU taxonomy categorization process. So we hope that this kind of tools and approaches can be utilized by the finance sectors, including the finance institutions and also the regulators, so that they can further streamline this kind of support of the blue finance activities by the finance institutions, and also to help drive the economic transformation of the different ocean economy sectors.
Thank you, Patrick. Some very clear points there on taxonomy, finance, and really, estimating the value that oceans, putting a number there on the value of ocean. So thank you for that. Ruth, I want to come back to you now, and then I'll go back to Anup as well on this topic of including other stakeholders when we are designing these local community programs. You talked about the really important role of women, but what is the role of other stakeholders like men and youth and other people in the local communities? How do we involve them in success of some of the programs like yours?
Thank you. For our case, back home in Papua New Guinea, much of the land is patrilineal. So it's handed down from generation, from men down. So when we want to go into the communities and work with women groups, it is very important that we get the buy-in from the men, so that they allow their wives, their sisters, their aunties, their mothers to come in and take part in the programs that we're doing. So as I mentioned earlier on, through K International, which is a development organization, so we bring K International into the scene where they help us provide the gender equity and diversity trainings. So in their trainings, these trainings are targeted towards husband and wife trainings. So they come in together, they sit into the programs, they go through the programs, and it sort of enlightens the men. It sort of nourishes the men, gives them the space to actually realize that it's about time I let the women stand up and take part and play that role and be able to make that decisions. So this is the importance of having men in the conversation as well, because ultimately when it comes to making decisions on land, making decisions on ownership, inheritance, that's where the men comes in. So it's important that we allow the men to be able to take part in the program as well. Now for the youths that you mentioned, as I mentioned earlier on also, it is very important that we get the youths behind the mothers. So in our programs, we get the youths to come in and take part. So they help with the mangroves. They help collect the seedlings, bring them to the nurseries and nurture them in the nurseries. And then they go out and they help the mothers to plant. This is very practical. So over time, we realized that when we plant the mangroves, not all the mangroves succeed. Some of them will die. So youths are the ones that have all the time in the world. They run around in the village and they do nothing. So we tell them, come and become rangers in the program. So they help the mothers and the young girls to go out and actually monitor the seedlings in the field, to get rid of the rubbish, to make sure that the seedlings are still standing, you know. So we involve the youth as well. So we make them feel that they're important and they have a role to play in our program as well.
Thank you so much, Ruth. That's so inspiring. I'm conscious of the time here. We are about at 10-minute mark. In case anyone has any questions, opening up. We have a question there.
Yes, thank you. This is for Patrick. I see you have a lot of research. The ocean actually has been giving us free energy by way of waves. Mm-hmm. And I've seen a little bit of studies on it, but I wonder how you value the waves that energy brought to the shores and how it can be captured as developing electricity.
Right, thank you. So actually, to be frank, I'm not an energy expert, but of course, like there are a lot of new innovations on renewable energies based on the ocean. The more advanced ones are really the wind power, and also there are also some developments on the solar power panels and also using the wave energy. But these are like kind of lag behind the wind power. I think it's really important to investigate on all these energies because they come in a strong power. But of course, like during this kind of investigations or developments, we have to be aware that we do not generate power which sacrifice a lot of like the ecosystems. So when we do this kind of planning, we have to ensure that these kind of technologies, they are really clean and they are not being implemented in some of the ecologically sensitive areas so that we can try our best to avoid sacrificing the ecosystems with the exchange of cleaner energy. That would be potentially some greenwashing as well. So yeah, these are some ideas from me.
Thank you, Patrick. Any other questions in the room? Otherwise, oh, we have one more question there.
Hi, thank you so much for sharing. So for the efforts that were discussed so far, for especially mangrove restoration, may I know whether you guys chose sites that are natural sites that have been degraded or engineered sites like, well, that has been concretized and all that, trying to reintroduce nature to that area? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. Ruth or Anoop, would you like to take that one?
Yeah, so if I've understood you correctly, are you talking about restoration of mangroves? Okay, so in one of our cases, we had in the mangrove areas that we conserve, there were areas which were relatively sparse for mangroves, and for the first time, the government came to us and they wanted, the sewage outfall for the city. They took away 400 acres of our land. As a result, it was mandatory that they had to plant mangroves. And I think one of the things that we did work with the government was that we gave some parts of our land, which was relatively sparse with the mangroves, which was used for plantation of mangroves and increasing the density of the mangrove cover in that region. So in that sense, I think there was a problem at the city level. The government did not have equivalent land. They came to us and they said, can we work with you and partner with you and look at a solve around this? So it benefited both the community, because otherwise you would have a sewage outfall straight away into the sea and causing a lot of harm to the environment. And there we have a solution as well, where the government funds the propagation of mangroves as well. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Anoop. So we have some last 5 minutes there. I'll come back to audience if there are any questions. I have one question, Ruth, if I could ask you. We've been talking a lot about the effort so far. I want to also ask about going forward, looking at the future. Could you share some clear best practices and learnings, for our audience in our room who are developing or want to create these kinds of local, these kind of sustainable solutions that involve local communities, and what will it really take to scale these kind of programs?
But I guess for us in a country like Papua New Guinea, we have lots of challenges as well as lessons that we've learned along the way. So one of the key lessons that I'd like to actually put it out there for people to think about is actually ongoing awareness about mangrove. So this is a key lesson that we learned. It's not only about going in once and coming out and forget about it for a while. It's about talking about it. It's about getting it out to the community, to the different stakeholders, even to the government, down to all the other agencies that are already working in the sector. Environment keeps changing. There's different scenarios everywhere. Situations are not the same. So the challenge is about ongoing awareness at the various levels and using the various mediums of communication very well so that we can get the message across. You can't talk from that eye level at the community level because people won't understand what you're saying. So it's about being able to devise appropriate communication materials that can be used at the different levels in order for people to understand. So that could be one of the key learnings that we learned. And the other is to nurture men to become the agents of change, to enable women to be able to stand up and make the decision that they want to. So these are the two learnings that I can
Thank you.
share.
Thank you, Ruth. Really, really important messages there. Anup, if I could come to you as well. Ruth highlighted the importance of awareness involving communities and men as agents of change. What are your thoughts as we look forward? What are the key learnings that you'd like to share with the audience?
I would tend to endorse what Ruth had said. I think we sometimes take it for granted that everybody understands what we're talking about. I myself learned over the years. And I think one of the things that we worked very closely with is with the school children. And over 5,000 to 6,000 school children. Of course, COVID period we were affected, and so we have restricted access. But otherwise, on a regular year, about 5,000 to 6,000 school children from across the Mumbai schools would come over, and the teachers and the students would come and understand the mangrove environment. There would be somebody who would be explaining the biodiversity, rich biodiversity. From that, we also took cue and we created something called a mangrove app. We initially began with our own, the species that were available in our own mangrove area, but we just realized that there was so much of a demand that people were asking a lot of questions, so we then extended to all the various mangrove species from 26 to almost 60. What we began with was in English as a mangrove app. But then we eventually, when I went back to Mr. Godrej and said, we are getting good response, he said, what about the local community? Because India has a very wide coastal belt, and the community, the languages they speak is very different. So we have now translated to more than 9 languages, and it's now downloaded in over 100 countries. So I think the ability to communicate and speak about the good things of the flora and the fauna and the ecosystem that goes with it, I think is a good stepping stone to getting far more action done as we go forward.
Thank you so much, Anup. We just have a minute left. Patrick, final words on the topic as we are looking to the future.
Yeah, thank you. So actually, I think the discussion was really great. We talk about like overarching principles and also activities that, like for example, governments and the business leaders, they have to do. And also we have like the underground actions to restore and conserve the ecosystems. And I truly think the ocean climate actions is a multi-stakeholder mechanism, which is important to have the governments, the businesses, the NGOs, the local communities to be engaged, and we speak the language. We don't just speak our like conservation language, or otherwise they don't understand. So after we get consensus and we act together, and then today is like just 30 minutes. We cannot talk about everything, but I am sure like all our speakers here are very welcoming to speaking more on the different solutions that we can work together on.
Thank you so much. So continuing the dialogue and inclusion of communities is really key.
And taking actions.
And taking actions, of course. So those are some key messages from this panel. We are on time. Thank you so much, panelists, for joining us and sharing those inspiring stories. Thank you to all of you as well.